So it is indeed Wednesday, often, even for entrepreneurs, the highest stress day of the week because we've identified all the things we need to get done before the end of the week. And we can also see how quickly the end of the week is coming. So I am thrilled, number one, Susie, that you're in our group. I'm so glad you're in the Profit Concierge group. And number two, that you've chosen to spend some time with us to offer some amazing tips for people in the whole arena of stress. So I'm going to do a quick intro here because Susie is a stress resolution coach and holistic health practitioner. And she's got coaching and programs that are designed to support, get this, driven entrepreneurs and business leaders. Hello, raise your hand. Leveraging the power of positive mindset. And I've often been called a Pollyanna. So this, of course, attracted me when we were seeking Susie out for our group. She helps high achievers find energy and balance with less force and frustration. And I'm going to ask her a very specific question about that. She has a Velocity membership and online programs showing people how to flip that stress into an empowered perspective, not necessarily get rid of, but flip it into an empowered perspective, and some tools that make it easier to adopt a healthier lifestyle along the way. And she hosts the Happified podcast, where she features guest experts in the field of healthy living, lifestyle, shares tools to help her audience really enjoy life with less stress and more flow. And we've just had a conversation that she's happifying the Happified podcast, so we can talk about that as well. And I am just so glad to have you. Thanks for joining us.
It is my pleasure. I'm so excited to be here with you. I love the energy of the group that you've created. So it's nice to have a little chat.
I love it. Well, I have been called a Pollyanna, and it's often been used kind of derogatory way, like I'm the glass half full gal. So one of the things that I think is really interesting that I'd love to pull out is one of the questions I asked you when we were talking, and you said, you know what the question really is, Pam? And I remember going, I don't know. You said, why is pursuit of a stress-free life actually limiting your success? Because on the actual bad side of Pollyanna, I work to find the happy. So talk to me about that for a minute, because that was fascinating to me.
And we're going to have to come back to working to find the happy, because good for you.
Cool. Good.
Yes. And so that's why I call myself a stress resolution coach rather than management, because I think people perceive that the goal is to live a life with zero stress, and then we can all be zen and it's all in the flow. And actually the flow state comes from that sweet spot of leaning into stress. It doesn't come from that super stress-free life, because then we're not inspired or motivated or driven to make any change or to learn and grow, right? To move ourselves forward from where we are. We could just sit back and relax. Right. And I think that then people get into this space of, my goal is to be stress-free, and then I can be happy all the time. And that in and of itself, because it's impossible to get to, becomes a stress-inducing quest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we tend to, in some cases, set ourselves up for frustration in the things that we think we're aiming for. And a lot of times those goals are completely kind of superimposed by society or family or what we think we see on social media, right? What's coming through Facebook sometimes is how it's used.
I love that. So actually, because we have so many entrepreneurs in this group, like without, of course, giving away anybody's secrets, like, can you give us an example of a client you've worked with where you've helped them work through this, and really, like, what is the stress they can lean into that's actually healthy stress as opposed to detracting from their ability to function?
Yes. Well, I think it shows up most clearly when we go from that 0 to 60 kind of pace, and we start really kind of ratcheting things up. So we're all in, we're completely in on our business. We're working 12-hour days or longer. We're, towards a finish line. We've got a launch coming up or something. And then we push ourselves to the max. We get sick as a result. And then we're completely out of the game for a week. We've got all this time to rest and recover. But
Yep.
then getting back into that groove is even more difficult because we're coming from that standstill and trying to find that easy momentum rather than that force of productivity and back in the full focus. And so we tend to really force ourselves to one end of the spectrum or the other. That's where I see it be the most difficult cycle for people to shift out of, because they feel like it's got to be all or nothing.
Got it. So it's almost like we're shooting up the graph to a point of high productivity, and then because we've done it a particular way, we crash, and
Right.
then we have to rest, so we lose time, and then we shoot up again. And it sounds like there's some level line through that that's much more actually ultimately productive as well as healthy.
Yes, and it's kind of counterintuitive, so people really try to resist it and say, "Oh, no, no, that's okay. That's not for me. I don't need to make more space or, give myself free time in the middle of the day. I'll just keep working through it," right? They try to think that they can outwork the
When we
stress.
are in that mode, I know, like, because I sit down and I do a lot of, I work with clients. That's always the easy stuff when we're one-on-one with the clients. But if I'm diving into a spreadsheet that's particularly complicated, or a payroll issue that's causing problems, or, a regulatory agency that's a pain in the neck, and I know I've got to dig in, somebody will come by or pop up and go, "Hey, Pam, Pomodoro that, get up and walk around." And when I'm in the middle of it, I'm like, "Shut up. I've got to plow through this." And even I, who know, no, no, no. In fact, my sister Chris is on this Zoom, on watching this as well, and she's found the same thing. The Pomodoro technique is absolutely fantastic, because for people who might not know what this is, and welcome everybody, whether you're live or on replay, I'm thrilled you're here for this conversation. For people who don't know what that is, it's working some unit of time with complete focus. And I think the standard is 25 minutes. And then you take just a 5-minute break. You literally walk away. But during that focus time, you don't have anything else on. Everything else is shut off. You only have the stuff on your desktop or your table that you're focused on in that moment. Then you stop no matter what when that timer goes off. You get up, you walk around, you stretch, you do a little exercise, you have a snack, whatever it is, for 5 minutes. Then you go back for 25. And after 3 rounds of that or 4 rounds of that, you can kind of set it up yourself. You take a longer break. So without question, and I know Chris said the same thing, when I do that, which is less time at my desk over a 3-hour, 4-hour period,
Right.
my productivity is about 2 to 3 to 4 times as much. And even knowing that, I will still get stubbornly embedded in a spreadsheet. How do you save a soul like me?
Yes. Well, it almost takes that intervention, right? And I've actually started collaborating with a friend, and we've been doing conscious co-working sessions for exactly this reason, because then we have that commitment to have these focused work sessions, because I do it too. I mean, I need to listen to myself as much as the
The
people
cobbler's kid has no shoes, right?
supporting. Exactly. I can sit and try to put something together for 2.5 hours and just get frustrated, and I'm distracted. And then the notifications are pulling me out of it, because exactly like you say, part of that magic is shutting down all the notifications so nothing pulls you out of it.
Mhm.
But those 5-minute breaks give us that opportunity to pull ourselves out, to step out of that stress and have a broader vision, right? So we can have those
Good
creative
point.
solutions when we need them. Whereas when we're in that focus, that stressed state, all we see is right in front of us,
Mhm.
and the alarms are going off. We're trying to find any excuse to be distracted and to get out of it. And productivity is like
Goes down the tube.
totally in the can.
Well, one of the really cool things you told me that I did not know is the similarities between bad stress and good stress. So talk to me about that and how that has implications with this whole, for example, Pomodoro thing, taking a break thing.
Yes. Some of the work that I love the most. Initially, when I started out, I was like everybody else in stress management. What we need to do is we need to look at the 3 aspects, and that's where my business name comes from. 3X. Less stress is physical, emotional, and environmental. But in the field of positive psychology, what they're looking at is they're actually quantifying the difference that comes from being in a positive state of mind.
Oh,
And they
wow.
diagnosed that sales are more than 30% better when we are in a positive state of mind than even negative, and definitely neutral. So cultivating that positivity has huge benefits. And some of the research then that they did is looking at Harvard college students, because this research was done by Sean Aker at Harvard. And simply telling the college students, so they describe the same symptoms of stress. Your hands get sweaty, your breathing changes, you've got this change in focus. And so they described in the same, listing these symptoms. Some are negative, you feel this way, you're really brought down by it, you're threatened by it. The same list of symptoms describing it as, this is your body primed for action. You are ready for anything. Your focus is so drilled in, you can see anything you need to see. And just by changing the tone of the same list of effects, they had a completely different physical impact. The way that they were read on the machines that were tracking their biorhythms is more similar to states of joy and courage than
Wow.
that threatening state of stress. And that's when we get that cardiovascular impact. Our vessels constrict, right? Because if the tiger's in the bush, we need to run away. And if
Hmm.
the tiger takes a swipe, we can't bleed out. So
Hmm.
the circulation leaves the surface of our skin. That's why we get the sweats, because it's powering our major muscles. So if the students were taught to think of that like, you are energized, you're ready for anything, they didn't have that when they felt the stress response come on. They were like, oh, this is great. I'm so ready for this challenge. And
Oh
they
my
lean
God.
in, and it's a completely different outcome.
I even totally got something additional and different from when you and I talked alone from that. And when we had our conversation, you were saying that, hey, it's the same physical reaction in the body, whether it's positive stress or what didn't occur to me. I'm not the deepest of thinkers in these things until it slaps me in the face, is we can actually decide how that very physical change is going to play out in our lives by picking, I'm going to look at this as chaos or I'm going to look at this as progress.
Exactly. Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
And that's what I really love, is because self-care has kind of gotten a bad rap because it's become such a marketing ploy
Yep.
lately,
Yep.
right? And people are like, I don't just have positive affirmations or mindset shifts to help you make a switch. Well, I do have some mindset shifts that help you make a switch, but sometimes it's just like a light switch, and then there's
Yeah.
the practice of coming back to it and remembering that we have that choice to make. But that awareness can be enough to start turning the tide.
Oh, that is amazing. So, okay, now I'm really excited. I got to ask another question. So, in life, in our circles, we generally have a lot of people who are like us. That tends to be what we do. But there are people in our lives that we all know that don't have that positive response. Like, it's the opposite. They see the glass half empty. And is awareness enough? Like, if somebody who just is naturally a glass half empty because they've been raised that way or whatever it might be, their life has been really tough and it's felt really hard. Is awareness enough? Or are there things you can teach somebody who's not naturally a Pollyanna? I use the term loosely, but naturally that way, to learn it, and do they want to learn it?
That's the million-dollar question,
Yeah.
right? And my husband kind of fits that description. He's the
Oh, no
yang to my
way.
yin, right? So
Wow.
he's more of a ruminator. He feels better prepared when he thinks about the worst possible outcome.
Yes, I've heard that a lot. I'm
Yeah,
gonna think the worst because anything's gonna be upside.
right, right. And I'm over here like, stop calling it in.
Yeah, yeah, right, similar discussion in our house. Um,
Yeah, and so what can help if they're open to making a shift? A lot of times, like you say, that they're convinced that's the most practical, successful way to approach things.
yeah,
Okay. We have to look at what's within our control and outside of our control. That's one of the things that I keep bringing myself back to.
fair enough,
Um,
great point.
but you can make worry constructive, and this can be part of a conversation and see how this feels for them. Is like, instead of only going down the list of the worst possible outcomes, you can look at as an exercise, kind of as a crisis response team would. And I've seen people speak to this, who work with hospitals, and first responder centers. They have to kind of work through the steps. They have to go through these drills and be best prepared for crisis, for the
Yep,
worst possible
that's a
situation.
great example, and I truly talk about that particular thought process, not with any judgment at all, but does it need to change, and how can we? So that first responders is a great example.
Right. Exactly. And so then if there's a way they can kind of step into that, like, okay, I'm worrying in a more constructive method. I've gone through the steps. I'm prepared for the worst possible outcome. Now I can just be in the moment and take it as it comes. I can't always bring my husband out of his ruminations. He's just got to go down all of that and explore. It's like his choose your own adventure, right? Well, if this, then this, then this. So there's only so much I can do, but I like to try to spin it that way and say, okay, now you're completely prepared. Now you can just be present in this moment.
Yep.
Because there's also that thought balancing practice where if you start going down that path, what are all the worst possible scenarios? And then to find the balance on the other side of that, well, what is the best possible scenario? Spend a little bit of time and paint that picture for yourself too. And then balance those by finding that middle path and say, what's the most likely outcome here? And then you can
really like that, because that allows you to deal with somebody very different than might be your natural way and say, there's value in the exercise you're doing here. Go for it. Get it mapped out in your head. And now let's both just let go of the outcome. And I know that sounds trite now. People use that, but I love the choose your own adventure. It's like, I'm prepared for anything. And now that I'm prepared, there's no other reason to hang on to those things. And I love that. I absolutely love that. God, every time I talk to you, this happens. We've got to get you into a campfire, my friend. Every Tuesday and Thursday, we have them on the Facebook group. And I would love to have you in the conversation. It's just anywhere from 2 to 8 people. We hang around, we talk stuff. And there's a lot of that goes on in there. And you bring so much to the table. Now, background, how long have you been doing this work? And, how do people find out about you, get to know more, get in your orbit?
So I made this shift about 5 years ago. I've done a lot of different work, and I like to think I've just kind of been on a concentric circle leading me to the right place, right, with all of the backstory and different types of work that I've done, so that I can speak to people in so many different aspects of what they're doing, and pursuing in their lives. And along the path to becoming a holistic health practitioner here in California, along that path, you qualify to become a massage therapist. And so I was working and doing primarily body work because, and this went for myself as well, when you're really stressed out, we don't have the time to dig in and say, what big shifts can I make? But I can book an hour and get myself on the table. Put me back in, coach. I'm good.
Put me in, coach. I love that.
So that was an easy practice to fill. And then last March, I had the impetus to put my full focus on the coaching. And so that's when I really was able to dig in and start putting the pieces together to really make this a focus and not, sit back under those conversations that wrap up in an hour and we'll see you when you rebook. So it's been really nice to be able to dig in. And then once the space, has been here, to see what's grown out of it. So I started the Happify podcast last August. And it's amazing. Suddenly that's like not too far out from a 1-year anniversary.
Wow,
and
congrats.
Thank you. I have so much fun having these conversations. It's all interviews.
I'm adding it right now to my phone, by the way, while you're talking, because I really want to hear this, especially what you're talking about, making some changes too.
Yeah. So it's a great forum to have these conversations, because I think that a lot of people feel that, we know what we should be doing. We should on ourselves a lot. And it's hard to make these changes. There we are.
I'm going to drop the link to this in everywhere too. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep, but keep going.
And So the purpose of these interviews is not to be further overwhelming, right? There's enough confusion. There's enough health gurus saying it's this diet. No, it's this diet. And I'm not a fan of diet, but what else do we call the way that we choose to eat, right? So until we get a better word, we're going to kind of land on that. But what it comes down to is finding out what works for us and tuning into that. So I have these conversations so that if someone resonates, here's a point to start pursuing this path and exploring and see what resonates. So I have a great time with that. And then I launched the Velocity membership in January. And that shares a thought topic every week in recorded meditation. That has been the structure. But what's happening is I'm loosening that up again a little bit more. And I'm bringing in more creativity and space for play. Because like we were talking about with those Pomodoro sessions, it's hard to give ourselves that permission to create space. But when we do, we have so much more focus when we come back to the table. It's a game changer. And so that's really my new mission, is to give ourselves this space, this permission to put ourselves and our playtime on our schedule. I'm a big fan of direct scheduling. So is your exercise actually on your calendar, and your meditation and your dance break at the end of the day? Like whatever it is that lights you up. We need to make ourselves as much of a priority as the, client access to our calendar link.
Because, and I just want to throw this in there again, in case anybody missed it the first time, taking those time slots out of your day, out of your work calendar, actually makes the time you're in your work twice or three times as much productive. And I can tell you, I've had the feeling of time bending. Like, what'll happen is I'll go into a Pomodoro and say, okay, I got 25 minutes. That is nowhere near enough to finish this thing. It's going to take me 4 hours. I do the first 25 minutes. I go off. And what I used to do is have a Lego table in my room. And I just do some Lego for 5 minutes. Then I'd come back and I'd be like, oh, I've still got 3 hours left of this, blah, blah, blah. An idea would come, or a problem that I anticipated I was just going to keep having would disappear, or, and all of a sudden that 4-hour project was done in that second block of time. And that's happened consistently. Like, that's not, oh, it happened once and it was magic. I can't emphasize for you, whether you're watching live or on replay, drop it down in here if you've ever tried the Pomodoro and the outcomes you've had, because it is so consistent. It's so consistent, and maybe you can help me with this, that when I sit down and choose not to do it, I actually judge myself while I'm not doing it, going, I know if I were doing this Pomodoro style, I'd be getting so much more done. Oh, you idiot. Why aren't you doing it Pomodoro style? Oh, I'm going to keep plowing. What? How do you, how does a human get to that answer? And yet we do.
Yeah, that habit, that way that, I don't have time or whatever. It feels like an indulgence to take on this different state. I'm still stuck on the fact that you have a Lego table. I think that I'm adding that to my hot list of recommendations to people get their play on. I think that's
I'll send you a picture and you can drop it in drop it in the group.
I love it. And that's the thing. And then, that's a whole other thing that bears exploring, is that inner critic, or the gremlin. And I just reread Rick Carson's book, Taming Your Gremlin. It's so relevant all the time. I get something different out of it every single time, because we all have it, that inner critic that comes up and says, you know better than this, or who are you to think you're doing this, or why would you do it that way? And the more we tend to go head to head with it, the louder it gets, right? The deeper it digs in.
There you go. So, who's the author of that book again?
Rick Carson.
One of the things we do in the group is give away a book every month to the most active person in the group. So I think we may add that to our book list.
It's terrific. And it's got illustrations in it, some line drawings, kind of Shel Silverstein style, that really bring a little bit of levity to it too. So
awesome.
He's got a terrific writing style. Yeah.
Gold you are dropping in here. Thank you so much. I know people are going to get a ton out of this. And folks, I have dropped in the comments the link to the podcast. I've also pulled it up on my phone and I'm getting ready to subscribe. Can't wait to listen to this. And on that page, there's an option to link in and get information on the Velocity membership. So I love that word velocity for this, because to me, that makes me think almost like I'm winding, like in my free time, I'm winding up the rubber band to be more efficient when I let it go. And then I have free time to wind it back up again. And wind up's probably not the right word. It's stressful, but it's like, it's a recharge. It's like just plugging in and recharging, and the benefits that brings in that next segment is you're going to get more velocity in that next segment where you focus. So that's really cool. And yeah, that was it. You can go to the podcast, listen to it, but also you can get some information on the velocity thing. I know if you drop a question in here that I'll be able to tag Susie and she'll jump in with answers. This is an area where I think we all have questions. The most positive of us, the ones who tend to see the glass half empty. And I just love you bring that positivity in your energy. I see it in you. I feel it in you. And I love this conversation. I'm going to have to find excuses to talk to you more often. And please join us at a campfire. I think you'd add number one, you'd add amazing energy to a campfire. Number two, I think that you'd feel the vibe we're trying to create there, and might give you some ideas for the membership as well, because it's a great place to come and just lift everybody a little bit. So that's my biggest thing there. What is one last thing you can tell us that we can do today to change, if we're heading in the wrong direction here on Hump Day Wednesday, that we can do to change that direction?
Well, I think that it's worth understanding or recognizing that when we get curious about how we're feeling, the way we're responding to stress, answering that inner critic that says, why are you doing it that way? As soon as we get curious, we're pulling ourselves out of that stress response, because when we are running on that sympathetic nervous system, we are in reaction mode. And the more that we engage our thought process,
I love it.
We're pulling ourselves out and we have more power in this moment. So
Brilliant.
It starts with that.
So ask the question when you start to feel whatever the thing is that triggers you, or after you've been triggered, probably as soon after you've been triggered as possible. Get curious about how you're actually feeling, and just asking that question can make it subside a little bit.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Pause and get curious and ask, what is it that's stirring the pot right now? That's a huge way to start changing the course.
You have changed my course today. I love it. Talking to you is amazing. You've taken what was already a positive arch and upped the angle on it a ton. So folks, live replay, let us know. Drop your questions in. Susie is an expert in our midst, and I'm so grateful you're here, and you will too if you've got questions around why it's important to not give up all stress. And I just think that's a great way to frame it. So thanks for being with us today. I am so grateful.
Thank you. It's been such a treat. I'm glad to start the day with you.
All right. You all have a positive Wednesday. Take care.